Part 3 continues on, and he says, "For he chose us in him before the creation of the world to be holy and blameless in his sight. In love, he predestined us." In love, he predestined us. Predestined is not a word that we use a lot, but what it means is he had a destiny in place for us as his children ahead of time. He had a destiny preset for us. Before we made a choice about him, he'd made a choice about us. Now we struggle with this thought. How does that work? But I think our problem is trying to understand it. When we try and understand how it works, we can't enjoy the blessing of it. If people have multiple arguments about what is predestination and how does that work, and I don't think we can ever enjoy the blessing of it when we're trying to rationalise it in our heads. It's something that we just have to believe, to trust. The God of this universe, the one who is creator and ruler and king and Lord, he is the one who's predestined us. Now, if he's predestined us and he has a preset purpose for our lives before we came along, well, surely as King of the universe, that's his right, isn't it? If he has a plan and purpose before we have a plan and purpose, well, that's actually really good. Because you see, what it means is God had our lives set down before we ever, well, it's hard to imagine a time where I wasn't, because as far as I know, I've always been in my life. But before that, God had a plan. Now, what would this give to us? What would this mean for us if we actually knew that we were predestined? Well, I think it would give us this, an incredible certainty, a surety, an assurance. Assurance is a good word, because we know commonly the word in our lives, insurance. Insurance is where we pay an insurance premium for our house insurance. And because we pay that money every year, if our house burns down, they'll give us enough money the insurance company will give us enough money to pay for it. But we've earned that right by paying our premium. But assurance comes not because we've paid anything, but because God has actually, this is assurance, God has done something which comes from his promise. He has promised to give us a security, not because of us or anything in us, or because we've earned anything, or because we've paid any premium, but because he's chosen to do it. That's it. It's the thing that we struggle with God's sovereignty and his predestination and purpose and things. He's done it all outside of us, and yet when we believe that, we have the greatest security, because it's his plans, it's his actions, and his plans aren't subject to our plans. So that's a good thing. Do you know that? You can't stuff up God's plan for your life. You can't ruin it. You can't mess it up. Sometimes, and we think, and there's definitely a truth to this, it's partly true. We'll say, the reason I'm a Christian is because I chose to follow Jesus. But you see, if that is the basis for our Christianity, then what happens on those days where we haven't chose to follow him that day, or where we haven't even thought about him much, or worse than that, we've walked in the opposite direction to him? You see, if our Christianity is based just on our ongoing choices, well, one day we'd be a Christian, and one day we wouldn't be a Christian, we'd be all over the place. But you see, our Christianity is based on him, on his plan for our life, on his decision and his choice. And so that gives us just an incredible, unshakable security. Before we were born, before the creation, God had a predestined plan for us. And that will give us a firm security. That's come to us through Jesus. That is a great blessing. We're talking about living blessed lives. If you live knowing that, you'll be blessed. Thank you, Father.